I came into this world during what you might call the worst possible timing. My parents' marriage was already hanging by a thread, and my arrival didn't exactly help matters. I'm Nicole, and my father Tom wasn't exactly thrilled when Mom told him she was pregnant. You planned this, didn't you, Sarah? He shouted during one of their fights. Got pregnant on purpose just to trap me here. I've heard this story so many times from Mom that I can almost see it playing out, even though I wasn't old enough to remember it myself. Mom always said Dad was too carefree, too irresponsible to be a real family man. He'd rather spend his paycheck on whatever caught his fancy than save for our future. Their arguments echoed through our small house for 4 long years after I was born. Sometimes they were about money, sometimes about Dad's late nights out, sometimes about me. It seemed like everything was a trigger for another explosive fight. When I turned 5, they finally made it official and got divorced. Dad didn't stick around to see how that worked out. He just vanished. No goodbye, no forwarding address, not a single child support payment. It was like he'd never existed, except for the hole he left in our lives and Mom's growing bitterness. Your father is nothing but a selfish coward, Mom would tell me whenever I asked about him. A real man doesn't abandon his child. She'd get this hard look in her eyes every time his name came up, and eventually, I learned to stop asking. The only connection I had left to Dad's side of the family was my grandmother, Eleanor. She and Mom couldn't stand each other. Grandma Eleanor blamed Mom for the failed marriage, saying she'd pushed Dad away with her constant nagging about money and responsibility. Mom, in turn, couldn't even bear to be in the same room as Grandma. When it was time for my visits with Grandma Eleanor, Mom would drive me to her house, practically drop me at the doorstep, and leave without even stepping inside. But once inside, everything changed. Grandma Eleanor would wrap me in warm hugs and tell me stories about Dad when he was young. She'd run her fingers through my hair and smile softly. You look just like your father, sweetheart, she'd say. You have his eyes, his smile, even that little dimple when you laugh. 3 years passed in a blur of weekend visits to Grandma Eleanor's house, filled with cookies, stories, and the warmth I couldn't find at home. By the time I turned 8, I had settled into a routine of sorts, weekdays with Mom, who was still bitter about Dad, and those precious weekends with Grandma, who never stopped hoping he'd return. But everything changed one rainy Tuesday in October. Mom got a call that made her face turn pale. Get your coat, Nicole, she said, her voice unusually quiet. Grandma Eleanor wants to see us both. It's important. The drive to Grandma's house was different this time. Usually, Mom would just drop me off and speed away, but today she parked the car and actually walked with me to the door. Something was wrong, I could feel it in the heavy silence between us. Grandma Eleanor looked smaller somehow, lying in her bed with papers scattered around her. Her usually perfectly styled silver hair was messy, and her face had a grayish tinge that scared me. But she smiled when she saw us, reaching out her thin hands. Sarah, Nicole, thank you for coming, she said, her voice weaker than I'd ever heard it. Please, sit down. Both of you. Mom actually sat down without argument, which was when I knew this was really serious. Grandma Eleanor's lawyer, Mr. Peterson, was there too, standing quietly in the corner like a somber statue. I need to discuss something important, Grandma said, looking first at me, then at Mom. I'm not well, and I need to make sure everything is properly arranged. She paused to catch her breath. My house and part of my savings will go to your Aunt Linda, Nicole. But I've set up something special for you. I remember playing with the hem of my sweater, not really understanding what was happening. Adult conversations about arrangements and papers always bored me, but I knew I was supposed to pay attention. I'm creating an educational fund for Nicole, Grandma continued, her voice growing stronger as she spoke about her plans. It will cover her college expenses when she turns 18. Mr. Peterson here will manage it until then. Mom's posture changed at these words, she sat up straighter, her eyes widening slightly. I noticed her hands, usually fidgety with anxiety, grow still in her lap. The money can only be accessed for educational purposes, And Nicole will have full control of it when she turns 18, Mr. Peterson added, stepping forward with some papers. Mrs. Eleanor has been very specific about these terms. I sat there, swinging my legs back and forth, more interested in the pattern of the wallpaper than in what they were discussing. College seemed like something from another lifetime. I was more concerned about my upcoming spelling test and whether Jenny Martinez would invite me to her birthday party. Everything is arranged, Sarah, Grandma said, reaching for Mom's hand. For once, Mom didn't pull away. I want to make sure my granddaughter has opportunities, regardless of everything else. The unspoken mention of Dad hung in the air between them. After signing some papers and saying our goodbyes, Mom and I drove home in silence. But this silence felt different from our usual tense quiet. It was almost peaceful. As we pulled into our driveway, Mom turned to me with an expression I'd never seen before. Well, she said, a hint of a smile playing at her lips, it seems at least one person in your father's family turned out to be decent after all. I didn't fully grasp the significance of that day until much later. At 8 years old, all I knew was that Grandma Eleanor had done something nice for me, and for once, Mom wasn't angry about it. The concept of college money meant nothing to me then. I was more excited about the butterscotch candy Grandma had slipped into my pocket when we left. Grandma Eleanor passed away just a few weeks after our last visit. The funeral was small and quiet, and I noticed Mom actually shed a few tears, though she tried to hide them. With Grandma gone, it felt like the last bridge to my father's world had crumbled away. Life moved on, as it always does. Over the next 2 years, Mom started dating a guy named Robert. He seemed nice enough, he had a good job at a bank, drove a nice car, and always brought me small gifts when he came to visit. Mom smiled more when he was around, and I hadn't seen her smile like that in years. Then they decided to get married. I was 10 at the time, and the prospect of having a complete family again made my heart flutter with excitement. But the real news came when Mom told me Robert had a daughter my age named Ashley, who would be moving in with us. I remember jumping up and down, my mind filled with visions of sharing secrets, having sleepovers in the same room, and finally having someone to play with who wasn't just a school friend. After years of being an only child in a broken home, the idea of having a sister seemed like a dream come true. The day they moved in, I had decorated our shared room with welcome signs and laid out some of my favorite books and toys to share. Ashley walked in, took one look around, and asked her dad if she could have her own room instead. I don't want to share with her, she said, not even bothering to lower her voice. She's not really my sister. That was just the beginning. Ashley quickly staked her claim on Mom's attention. She'd curl up next to her on the couch during movie nights, pushing me to the side. She started calling Mom Mommy within the first week, and Mom's face would light up every time she did. Mom, want to see my art project? I'd ask, holding up my drawing. In a minute, honey, Mom would reply, but that minute never came because Ashley would already be showing Mom her homework or telling her about her day. When I finally broke down and told Mom how I felt, her response cut deep. Don't be selfish, Nicole, she said, barely looking up from helping Ashley with her homework. Ashley lost her mother when she was very young. She needs extra attention and a woman's love. You should understand that. But what about my love? I wanted to scream. Instead, I just nodded and retreated to my newly silent room, where Ashley's empty bed served as a constant reminder that I wasn't enough, not for my father, and now, it seemed, not for my mother either. The changes in our family happened so gradually that at first, I barely noticed them. But looking back now, I can see how each small moment added up to create an ever-widening gap between me and my mother. It started with shopping trips. Mom would come home with bags full of designer clothes for Ashley, fancy jeans, brand-name sneakers, cute tops from expensive stores. Meanwhile, I got my clothes from department store sales and discount outlets. Ashley needs to maintain a certain appearance at her new school, Mom would say when I pointed out the difference. Besides, you're not as interested in fashion as she is. Then came the biggest bombshell. They were sending Ashley to Riverside Prep, the expensive private school across town. I still remember the day they announced it over dinner. Ashley's test scores are exceptional, Robert said proudly. She needs a more challenging academic environment. What about me? I asked, pushing my peas around my plate. Could I go to Riverside too? Mom and Robert exchanged that look I'd come to hate, the one that meant they'd already discussed this without me. Honey, you're doing fine at Lincoln Public, Mom said. Ashley has different needs. She's really gifted, you know. The regular program suits you better. That night, I cried into my pillow until I had no tears left. But something changed in me after that. As the years passed, I stopped trying to compete for Mom's attention. I stopped showing her my report cards, stopped telling her about my achievements, stopped hoping she'd notice me. By 15, I'd accepted my place in the family hierarchy. I threw myself into my studies at Lincoln Public, not for them, but for myself. I joined the debate team, competed in science fairs, and maintained straight A's. My teachers would write glowing comments on my papers: exceptional analysis, Nicole, outstanding work, you have a bright future ahead. Meanwhile, at home, dinner conversations revolved around Ashley's latest achievements at Riverside Prep. Her participation in the Model UN conference. Her selection for the advanced placement program. Her tennis tournaments against other private schools. Ashley's English teacher says she has real potential as a writer, Mom would gush. She gets straight A's without even trying, Robert would add proudly. I'd sit there quietly eating my dinner, thinking about my own straight A's, about how I'd just won first place in the regional science fair, about how my debate team coach wanted me to lead the team next year. But I kept these thoughts to myself. What was the point of sharing them? My achievements at a public school couldn't possibly compare to Ashley's private school accomplishments, at least not in their eyes. Still, there were moments, like when Mom and Robert would attend every single one of Ashley's tennis matches but couldn't make it to my debate team finals, that the old hurt would surface. But I'd learned to push it down, to focus on what I could control. I had my education, my goals, and thanks to Grandma Eleanor's foresight, I had a future that was mine alone. Senior year flew by in a whirlwind of college applications and scholarship essays. As graduation approached, I found myself sitting at my desk late into the night, surrounded by brochures from different universities. My grades had opened up a lot of possibilities. I was particularly excited about State University's full scholarship program and had already been pre-approved based on my academic record. You don't have to take the scholarship route, you know, my guidance counselor, Mrs. Martinez, had told me. With your grandmother's college fund, you could attend any school you want. But I had bigger plans for that money. I want to be smart about it, I explained to her. If I can get a full scholarship, I can save the fund for a down payment on a house after graduation. Mrs. Martinez had smiled at that. Always thinking ahead, aren't you, Nicole? 2 weeks before my 18th birthday, Mom called me down for what she termed a family meeting. I found them all sitting in the living room, Mom perched nervously on the edge of her favorite armchair, Robert looking serious on the couch, and Ashley beside him, not quite meeting my eyes. Sit down, Nicole, Mom said, patting the ottoman across from her. We need to discuss something important. I sat, noting how formal everything felt. Usually, family discussions happened over dinner or in passing, never with this kind of setup. As you know, Mom began, Ashley is graduating this year too. She paused, glancing at my stepsister. We've been looking at colleges. I got accepted to Princeton, Ashley interrupted, finally looking at me. It's my dream school. That's, congratulations, I said, not sure why this required a family meeting. The thing is, Robert jumped in, even with Ashley's excellent education at Riverside Prep, her grades don't quite qualify her for a full scholarship. Mom leaned forward. We've spent so much on her private school education, and it's been worth every penny, but we just don't have the resources for Princeton's tuition. I sat there, still not understanding why they were telling me this. Then Mom dropped the bomb. We were hoping, since you have your grandmother's college fund, you might be willing to share it with Ashley. The room went silent. I stared at Mom, waiting for her to say she was joking. but her face remained serious, expectant even. Share my college fund? I repeated slowly. The one Grandma Eleanor set up specifically for my education? You're getting a full scholarship anyway, Ashley said, as if this justified everything. You don't even need the money. We're family, Mom added softly. Family helps each other. I sat there, feeling like I'd been punched in the gut. The college fund, my safety net, my future, my grandmother's last gift to me, they wanted me to hand it over to Ashley. The same Ashley who'd spent years making sure I knew I wasn't really family. The same Ashley who got everything while I got the leftovers. No, the word came out of my mouth before I could even process the full weight of what they were asking. Absolutely not. What do you mean, no? Mom's voice took on that sharp edge I'd grown to know so well. I mean no. This money was left to me by my grandmother. It's mine, and I'm going to use it for my future. Robert's face turned red. Do you hear how selfish she sounds, Sarah? This is exactly what I've been talking about for years. I couldn't help but let out a bitter laugh. Selfish? That's rich coming from you guys. Watch your tone, young lady, Robert snapped. You've always been jealous of Ashley. Always trying to compete with her, and now you're taking your revenge by denying her a chance at a good education. The absurdity of his statement made me laugh again, though there was no humor in it. Jealous? Of what exactly? Of how you've given her everything while treating me like an afterthought. And by the way, if she's as brilliant as you've always claimed, why didn't she earn a scholarship like I did? Ashley's face crumpled, and tears started streaming down her cheeks. She jumped up from the couch and ran upstairs, her dramatic exit punctuated by the slamming of her bedroom door. How dare you? Mom's voice was quiet, dangerous. How dare you be so cruel? Cruel? I'm being cruel? I stood up, my hands shaking. You're the ones trying to take away my college fund. Mom stood too, her face hard. Well, then, let me make this very clear. You have 2 weeks until your birthday to change your mind. If you don't agree to share that money with your sister, you can find somewhere else to live. The floor seemed to tilt under my feet. What? You're kicking me out? This is my house too. No, Nicole, it's not. Mom's voice was cold. This house is in my name. You'll be 18, an adult. I'm not legally obligated to support you anymore. I can't believe this, I whispered. I can't believe you're choosing her over me. Again. You're choosing money over family, Robert shot back. Family? I practically spat the word. When have you ever treated me like family? They had no answer for that. Instead, Mom just said, 2 weeks, Nicole. Think carefully about your choice. The next 3 days were like living in a ghost town where I was the only ghost. No one spoke to me at breakfast. My questions at dinner were met with silence. Ashley acted like I was invisible, and Mom and Robert treated me like an unwelcome houseguest who had overstayed their welcome. I ate my meals in my room, spent my free time at the library, and tried to make myself as scarce as possible. But every night, lying in my bed, I could hear them in the living room, talking, laughing, watching TV together. A happy family of 3, with no room for a 4th. For days after that disastrous family meeting, I called Mr. Peterson, my grandmother's lawyer. My hands were shaking as I dialed his number, but his warm, familiar voice helped calm my nerves. Nicole, I was just thinking about you. Your 18th birthday is coming up soon. Yes, Mr. Peterson, that's actually why I'm calling. I took a deep breath and told him everything, the demand for money, the ultimatum, all of it. He listened quietly until I finished, then cleared his throat. Those funds are legally yours to control the moment you turn 18, Nicole. Your grandmother was very specific about that. And frankly, I think she suspected something like this might happen someday. What do you mean? Let's just say, she knew her son's ex-wife very well. He paused. Now, about your living situation. Look, here's what I suggest. Pick your college first, preferably one in a different city, then find an apartment nearby. I can help you with the paperwork. You won't be able to access the funds until your birthday, but we can get everything set up in advance. I spent that afternoon researching apartments near State University, where I'd already been accepted with a full scholarship. By evening, I'd found a small but decent place, just a 10-minute walk from campus. The landlord, Mrs. Chen, was willing to hold it for me with just a promise of payment on my birthday. For the next week, I quietly packed my life into boxes, one small piece at a time. I didn't want anyone to notice what I was doing. Each night, after everyone was asleep, I'd pack another box and hide it in my closet. Photos, books, clothes, my life condensed into cardboard containers. On the morning of my 18th birthday, Mom cornered me in the kitchen. "Well," she asked, arms crossed. "Have you made your decision?" I looked at her, really looked at her, and felt strangely calm. "Yes, I have." "The answer is still no." "Then you know what that means." Her voice was hard. "I want you out of this house today." "Okay," I said simply. I think my calm acceptance threw her off. She probably expected tears or begging. Instead, I went upstairs, got my pre-packed boxes, and called the taxi I'd scheduled the day before. 20 minutes later, I was turning the key in the lock of my new apartment. The first thing I did was call Mr. Peterson, who had all the paperwork ready. By noon, I had access to my grandmother's fund. By 1 o'clock, I'd paid my first month's rent and security deposit to Mrs. Chen. That afternoon, I walked to the local coffee shop where I'd applied for a job the week before. The manager, Mike, had already agreed to hire me for the summer before college started. My apartment was small, just a studio with a kitchenette, but it was mine. That night, as I sat on my newly purchased air mattress, eating takeout and watching the sunset through my single window, I felt something unexpected: freedom. 2 weeks into my new life, I was scrolling through Facebook during my coffee shop break when my phone started buzzing with notifications. Friends from high school were messaging me, "Have you seen your mom's post? Are you okay? What's going on?" With shaking hands, I pulled up Mom's page and there it was, a long, dramatic post about ungrateful children and family loyalty. "My daughter has broken our hearts," she wrote. "After everything we've done for her, she selfishly refused to help her sister get a college education. Instead, she's hoarding money from her grandmother while her sister's dreams are put on hold. I never thought I'd raise such a selfish, heartless child." The comments below were worse. Relatives I barely knew were chiming in, "How could she be so ungrateful? Family should come first. What a spoiled brat." I sat there in the break room, my coffee getting cold, as anger and hurt battled inside me. Then something snapped. If Mom wanted to air our dirty laundry on social media, fine. Let's tell the whole story. I opened my laptop and started typing. Since my mother has chosen to make our private family matters public, let me share my side of the story. Yes, I refused to give my stepsister my college fund, money that my grandmother specifically left for my education. What my mother forgot to mention is that she gave me an ultimatum: either give up my inheritance or get kicked out of the house. On my 18th birthday, she followed through on that threat. I was forced to move out because I wouldn't give away money that legally belonged to me. For years, I watched as my stepsister got private school education while I went to public school. I watched as she got expensive clothes while I got department store leftovers. I worked hard, got straight A's, and earned a full scholarship to college, something I'm proud of. But apparently, that wasn't enough. They wanted my inheritance too. So yes, I chose to keep my grandmother's gift to me. And yes, I'm now living on my own, working and preparing for college. But I didn't choose this situation, my mother did when she kicked her own daughter out on her birthday. I hit post and went back to work. By the time my shift ended, the response was overwhelming. Former teachers, neighbors, even some of Mom's old friends were commenting with messages of support. People who'd known our family for years started sharing stories of how they'd noticed the favoritism, but never said anything. My phone rang that evening. Mom's name flashed on the screen. How dare you, she hissed when I answered. Do you know how humiliating this is? Mrs. Peterson from church won't even look at me anymore. Half my friends are questioning my parenting. Maybe they should, I said calmly. You kicked your daughter out for not giving away her inheritance. What kind of parent does that? I did everything for you. No, Mom. You did everything for Ashley. And that's fine, she's your daughter now, but I'm done. Goodbye, Mom. I hung up and blocked her number. Then I blocked her on all social media, along with Robert and Ashley. It was surprisingly easy, like cutting away dead weight I'd been carrying for years. Now I'm in my first semester at State University, studying business management. My small apartment feels more like home every day. Sometimes I think about them, Mom, Robert, and Ashley, but those thoughts come less and less often. Grandma Eleanor's picture sits on my desk, and sometimes I swear she's smiling at me with pride. She knew, somehow, that I'd need this money not just for education, but for freedom. She gave me the means to choose my own path, and I'll never forget that. My name is Grace, and for 18 years, I lived with my parents, Lisa and Robert, in a modest 2-story house in Minneapolis. We weren't the kind of family that had movie nights or went on exciting vacations, but I figured that was just how my parents were: practical, reserved, focused on work and everyday routines. Mom worked as an accountant, spending her evenings with spreadsheets and calculator in hand. Dad was in sales, always on the phone closing deals or preparing presentations. They provided for me, kept me fed and clothed, helped with homework when I asked. But there was always this distance. No warm hugs, no I love yous, thrown around casually like I saw in other families. I told myself it was just their way, that not every family had to be all touchy-feely to be good. Grace, honey, we need to talk to you after dinner, Mom said on the morning of my 18th birthday. Her tone was unusually serious, but I didn't think much of it. Maybe they had planned something special, though they'd never really made a big deal out of birthdays before. That evening, I sat at our kitchen table, picking at the remains of my birthday dinner, takeout pizza, my choice. Mom had barely touched her slice, and Dad kept checking his phone, something clearly on his mind. So, Grace, Dad finally spoke, putting his phone down. Your mother and I have been planning something for a while now, and since you're 18 today, it's time we told you. I perked up, expecting maybe news about college preparations, or perhaps even a surprise gift. What came next hit me like a bucket of ice water. We're selling the house, Mom stated flatly. Your father and I are moving to Europe. We're going to start our own business there. I stared at them, waiting for the punchline. Oh, okay. When are we leaving? I mean, I'll need to figure out about college applications and... No, Grace, Mom cut me off, her voice sharp. We're moving. You're not coming with us. What do you mean? My voice came out small, childlike. I don't understand. You're 18 now, Dad explained, as if discussing a business transaction. An adult. It's time for you to take care of yourself. I looked between them, my brain refusing to process what I was hearing. But, what about college? I'm supposed to start in a few months. We've been talking about it. That's your responsibility now, Mom said, standing up to clear the plates. To be honest, Grace, you've been a burden all these years. We've fed you, clothed you, supported you for 18 years. That's more than enough. The words hit me like physical blows. A burden? All these years? I felt tears welling up in my eyes, but Mom just continued loading the dishwasher as if she hadn't just shattered my entire world. You can stay here until we sell the house, Dad added, his tone suggesting this was some kind of generous offer. But the sooner you figure out your own situation, the better it will be for everyone. I sat there, frozen, as my parents discussed property values and moving logistics over my head. 18 years of memory suddenly shifted, transformed. Every quiet dinner, every missed school play, every brief good job instead of a hug, they weren't signs of restraint or different parenting styles. They were signs that my parents had been counting down the days until they could get rid of me. The next morning, I woke up feeling like I'd been hit by a truck. My hands were trembling as I dialed Grandma Eleanor's number. She picked up on the second ring, her warm voice already making me feel a little less lost. "Gracie? Is everything okay, sweetheart? You never call this early." I could barely get the words out, but somehow I managed to tell her everything: the birthday dinner, their announcement, Mom calling me a burden. With each detail, I heard Grandma's breathing getting heavier on the other end of the line. "Those absolute," she muttered something under her breath I'd never heard her say before. Then, in a stronger voice, "Pack your bags, Gracie. You're coming to live with me. Right now." I didn't need to be told twice. I grabbed my largest suitcase from the attic and started throwing in everything I could think of: clothes, photos, my laptop, the few pieces of jewelry I owned. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely zip the suitcase closed. Downstairs, Mom and Dad were still talking about property values. They barely looked up when I dragged my suitcase past them and out the door. No goodbye, no questions about where I was going. Nothing. Grandma was waiting on her front porch when I pulled into her driveway. She wrapped me in one of her bear hugs, the kind of hug I'd always wished I'd get from Mom, and led me inside the cozy house I'd visited so many times before. Over cups of her famous hot chocolate, with extra marshmallows, just like when I was little, Grandma laid out her plan. "First things first, you're going to college," she declared, her tone leaving no room for argument. "I've got savings, and they're going to good use sending my grandbaby to school." "Grandma, I can't take your money." "You're not taking anything. I'm giving it." She reached across the table and squeezed my hand. "And there's something else you should know. I'm changing my will." I looked up, surprised. Grandma's expression was fierce. "This house, my savings, everything's going to you, Gracie. Not a single penny to your mother. This house isn't much, but it's paid for. The savings aren't millions, but they're enough. It'll all be yours." Later that evening, as we sat in her small but immaculate living room, Grandma brought up one more point. "We need to agree on something, Gracie," she said carefully. "I think it's best if we keep the details of all this between ourselves. No need to air dirty laundry to the rest of the family." I nodded, understanding immediately. "I don't want to talk about it anyway." "Good," Grandma said, patting my hand. "Let them think what they want. We know the truth, and that's what matters." College life fell into a comfortable routine. Each morning, I'd wake up to the smell of Grandma's coffee and the sound of her humming in the kitchen. We'd have breakfast together before I headed to my classes, and in the evenings, I'd tell her about my day while she worked on her crossword puzzles. Occasionally, relatives would drop by to visit Grandma. During one such visit, Aunt Sarah mentioned casually, "Oh, did you hear? Lisa and Robert finally made it to Europe. Opened some kind of business there, I hear." I just nodded and excused myself to study. I didn't want to know more. What was harder to handle were the comments about my independence. They came regularly, wrapped in admiration that made me want to scream. "You're such a strong young woman, Grace," Uncle Mike said during one visit. "Taking charge of your life, moving out on your own. Very mature of you." "It's admirable how you decided to make your own way," Cousin Rachel chimed in. "Not everyone your age would choose independence over living with their parents." Each time, I'd force a smile and change the subject. It didn't take long to figure out the story my parents had spun: their driven, independent daughter, so eager to strike out on her own that she'd moved out right after high school. It was easier to let everyone believe it. The truth hurt too much to share. Then came the worst day of my life. Grandma had been feeling tired for weeks, but we both brushed it off as just age catching up with her. By the time we realized it was more than that, it was too late. The doctor said words like aggressive and advanced stage, and before I knew it, I was holding her hand in a hospital room, watching her slip away. "You're the best thing that ever happened to me, Gracie," she whispered one night, her voice weak but her eyes clear. Don't you ever forget that. She died 3 months later, a year before I was set to graduate. The funeral was small but well attended by family. Everyone came except my parents. Aunt Sarah told me they'd been informed but said they couldn't make it back from Europe on such short notice. I graduated with honors the following year, clutching my diploma and fighting back tears because the one person I wanted to see me walk across that stage wasn't there. But Grandma had prepared me for everything, even her absence. Thanks to her generosity, I had options. I used some of the inheritance to buy a lovely apartment closer to downtown, where I'd landed a job at Preston and Associates investment firm. I decided to keep her house and rent it out. I couldn't bear to sell it, but I also couldn't face living there without her. Life has a funny way of surprising you when you least expect it. That's how I met James. He walked into the wrong conference room at Preston and Associates, looking for a client meeting that had been moved. Instead, he found me preparing for a presentation, surrounded by scattered papers and empty coffee cups. Either this isn't the Thompson meeting, or they've really changed their marketing strategy, he joked, gesturing at my chaos. I couldn't help but laugh. Next door. But hey, at least you found someone who appreciates a good coffee addiction. One coffee date led to another, and before I knew it, we were spending every free moment together. James was different from anyone I'd ever met, warm, genuine, and incredibly patient. When I finally told him about my parents one night, he just held me and listened, not trying to fix anything or offer empty platitudes. "You didn't deserve that," was all he said, wiping away my tears. Not any of it. A year and a half after that wrong turn into my conference room, James took me to dinner at the restaurant where we'd had our first date. He seemed nervous all evening, fidgeting with his napkin and checking his pocket every few minutes. When dessert arrived, I found a ring nestled next to my chocolate soufflé, a stunning diamond that caught the candlelight and scattered it across our table. "I want to build a family with you," he said, his voice shaking slightly. "A real one, filled with all the love you should have had all along." I said yes through happy tears, and for the first time in years, I felt truly, completely whole. The next day, I posted a photo on social media, my hand with the ring, James hugging me from behind. "Said yes to forever with my best friend," I wrote, my heart so full of joy I thought it might burst. 2 days later, the message appeared in my inbox. My mother's name popped up, and my stomach lurched. "Dearest Grace, your father and I just saw your wonderful news. We are so incredibly happy for you. We know we have no right to ask this, but we've spent years regretting how we treated you. Not a day goes by that we don't think about our terrible mistakes. We'd love to come to your engagement party, to try to make amends. We understand if you say no, but we miss you so much. Love, Mom and Dad." I stared at the message until the words blurred. When James came home, I showed it to him, my hands trembling. "What do you think?" I asked, hating how small my voice sounded. James read the message twice, his arm around my shoulders. "I think it's entirely your decision. But if they'd genuinely changed, if they're truly sorry, maybe they deserve a chance to prove it." I thought about Grandma, about what she would say. She'd probably tell me to be careful, but follow my heart. "Okay," I whispered, more to myself than to James. "One chance." I wrote back a short message. "The party is next Saturday at 7. You can come at 6 to talk first." My hands wouldn't stop shaking as I got ready that Saturday evening. James squeezed my shoulder and kissed my cheek before heading out to pick up the catering, leaving me alone to face my parents. At exactly 6 p.m., the doorbell rang. I opened the door to find them standing there, Mom in an expensive-looking dress, Dad in a crisp suit. They looked exactly the same, yet somehow like strangers. "Grace, darling," Mom stepped forward for an awkward hug. I stood stiffly, letting her embrace me but not returning it. "You look wonderful. And what a lovely apartment." We moved to the living room, where they perched uncomfortably on the edge of my sofa. Dad commented on the decor, Mom asked about my job, both of them acting like we were distant acquaintances at a cocktail party rather than family. Then Dad cleared his throat, his pleasant expression dropping away like a mask. Grace, let's cut to the chase. We know about your situation. My situation? I felt my stomach clench. Yes, Mom leaned forward, her eyes sharp. We know about Grandma's inheritance. The house, the savings, all of it. And we've done our research. What research? The house is worth at least $300,000 in today's market, she stated, like she was giving a business presentation. And knowing Mom, there must be significant savings too. Plus, we see you're doing very well, nice apartment, wealthy fiancé. Get to the point, I said, my voice trembling. We want $70,000, Dad announced flatly. It's less than we're entitled to, really, but we're being reasonable. I stared at them, speechless. Mom pulled out a small notebook. I've calculated everything. As Mom's daughter, I have a right to inherit. If you don't give us the money, we'll sue for half of everything, the house, the accounts, all of it. You can't be serious, I whispered. Oh, we are, Dad's voice hardened. And if you don't cooperate, we'll make sure everyone knows how you manipulated your grandmother. How you turned her against us, convinced her to cut out her own daughter. I never. It doesn't matter what really happened, Mom cut in. What matters is what people will believe. Do you want all your relatives to know how you schemed to get your grandmother's money? Want your new in-laws to hear about it? The doorbell rang again, early guests arriving. I stood up, feeling dizzy. I need time to think about this. Think fast, Dad stood, straightening his tie. We want an answer soon. They walked out just as James's parents walked in, all smiles and congratulations. I plastered on a fake smile and tried to focus on greeting guests, but my mind was spinning. As the apartment filled with cheerful voices and laughter, I felt like I was watching everything from underwater. The morning after the engagement party, I sat at my kitchen table, staring at my phone. James had gone to work, but not before holding me close and whispering, "Whatever you decide, I'm with you." My hands were steady this time as I dialed their number. Mom picked up on the first ring. Have you made your decision? No hello, no pleasantries. Yes, I took a deep breath. I'm not giving you any money. Grandma made her choice, and I'm honoring it. You'll regret this, she hissed and hung up. They didn't waste any time. That evening, my phone started buzzing with notifications. My parents had posted a lengthy message on social media, complete with sad-faced emojis and carefully filtered photos of them looking distressed. Our hearts are breaking, the post read. After losing everything in Europe, our home, our business, all our savings, we turned to our only daughter for help. But Grace, who was living in luxury with her wealthy fiancé, refused to help her own parents. We are now homeless, moving between relatives' homes, not knowing where we'll sleep next week. How did we raise such a heartless child? Within hours, the post had been shared throughout our entire extended family. My phone exploded with messages. Grace, how could you? Your own parents. They raised you for 18 years. You have plenty of money now, why can't you help them? Aunt Martha called me, sobbing. They need a place to stay, Grace. That house of your grandmother's is just sitting there with renters in it. Your own parents should be living there. Uncle Peter's message was particularly harsh. Your grandmother would be ashamed of you. Your parents sacrificed everything for you. I wanted to scream, to tell them all the truth, but my throat felt closed up every time I tried to respond. Then came the wedding cancellations. I'm sorry, Grace, but I can't celebrate while your parents are suffering, Cousin Rachel texted. What kind of person starts a marriage by turning their back on family, wrote another relative. The final blow came from Uncle Mike, who'd always been kind to me at family gatherings. His message was brief and professional. Grace, as a lawyer, I feel obligated to inform you that I will be representing your parents in their lawsuit against you regarding your grandmother's estate. The law is clear about children's rights to inheritance, and your grandmother's will can be contested. Expect official documentation soon. I recommend you reconsider your position before this gets messy. You don't want to start your married life with a legal battle. Uncle Mike. I sat in my darkened apartment, reading and rereading the messages, watching as my entire extended family turned against me. The irony was almost funny. They were finally seeing me as the terrible person my parents had always thought I was, but for all the wrong reasons. James found me there when he got home, still scrolling through the endless stream of accusations and disappointment. He took one look at my face and pulled me into his arms. I sat at my computer, fingers hovering over the keyboard. Taking a deep breath, I began to type. To my family and friends. I've stayed quiet for 8 years about what really happened between my parents and me. I let everyone believe their version of events because the truth was too painful to share. But now I have no choice. On my 18th birthday, my parents sat me down and told me they were selling our house and moving to Europe. They informed me I wouldn't be coming with them. You've been a burden for 18 years, my mother said. That's more than enough. They refused to help with college, refused to support me in any way. I was given until the house sold to figure out my own situation. I didn't choose independence as they claimed. I was abandoned. Grandma Eleanor took me in that very night. She gave me a home, paid for my education, and showed me what unconditional love really means. Now my parents are back, demanding $70,000 and threatening to sue me for half of Grandma's inheritance. They're threatening to destroy my reputation if I don't comply. But Grandma, being the wise woman she was, saw this coming. My hands were shaking as I uploaded the video file beneath my post. Grandma's face filled the screen, looking tired but determined, sitting in her hospital room. Her lawyer, Mr. Thompson, was visible in the background. Lisa, Grandma began, addressing my mother directly. If you're watching this, it means you're trying to take what I left to Grace. I knew you would. You're my daughter, and I love you, but your greed has poisoned your heart. I, Eleanor Marie Sullivan, being of sound mind and clear judgment, am recording this message in the presence of my attorney. I want to state explicitly why I've chosen to leave everything to my granddaughter, Grace. 8 years ago, you and Robert threw your own child away like she meant nothing. You refused to help with her education, refused to give her any support. You called her a burden. A burden? Your own daughter, who I watched you bring into this world. Grace never told anyone what you did. She kept your secret, even when relatives praised you for raising such an independent daughter. She protected your reputation while you abandoned her. I'm leaving my house, my savings, and everything I own to Grace. Not because she manipulated me, as I'm sure you'll claim, but because she showed more character in her pain than you've shown in your entire life. This is my final decision, made with full mental capacity and witnessed by my lawyer. Grace is my sole heir. That's all I have to say. The video ended with Grandma's lawyer confirming the date and circumstances of the recording. I added a final line to my post. I've kept this video private for years, respecting Grandma's wishes to avoid family drama. But now that my parents are threatening legal action and spreading lies, I have no choice but to share the truth. I'm sorry you all had to find out this way. With trembling fingers, I clicked post. The responses started flooding in within minutes of my post. The first call came from Uncle Mike. Grace, his voice cracked. I had no idea. My God, I'm so sorry. I'm withdrawing from the case immediately. What they did to you? Aunt Sarah called next, sobbing. That birthday dinner. I remember bringing you a gift the next week, but your parents said you'd moved out. They seemed so proud of your independence. How could they? The family group chat exploded with messages of shock, support, and apologies. Cousin Rachel, who'd canceled her RSVP just days ago, wrote a long message. I feel horrible about judging you without knowing the truth. Your parents painted such a different picture. Please tell me it's not too late to attend the wedding. I want to be there to support you. One by one, all the wedding cancellations were reversed. Relatives who'd condemned me just days before now reached out with heartfelt apologies and offers of support. Even distant family members I barely knew sent messages expressing their shock and sympathy. "Your place card will be waiting," I told each one. No hard feelings. Through the grapevine, I heard snippets about my parents. They'd moved in with some old friends from their college days, picking up temporary work here and there. Mom was doing bookkeeping for small businesses, Dad taking whatever sales jobs he could find. Their grand European dreams had apparently crumbled long ago. Part of me expected to feel guilty about exposing them, about sharing Grandma's video. But sitting in my apartment the night before my wedding, looking at the photo of Grandma on my mantel, I felt only peace. "You were right, Grandma," I whispered to her picture. The truth did set me free. James found me there, wrapped his arms around me from behind. "Any regrets?" he asked softly. I thought about the scared 18-year-old girl I'd been, packing her bags in silence. About the grandmother who'd saved me with her love and foresight. About the woman I'd become, stronger, wiser, but no longer carrying the weight of other people's lies. "Not a single one," I replied, and I meant it. Tomorrow, I'll walk down the aisle surrounded by family who knows the real me, both the pain I've survived and the strength it gave me. My parents won't be there, but the empty seats won't matter. I have everything I need: love, truth, and finally, beautifully, peace. Some people might say I'm heartless for cutting my parents out of my life, for not helping them in their time of need. But I've learned that real family isn't about obligation or guilt, it's about love, support, and truth. And sometimes, the most loving thing you can do is simply let go.